This week on X-Trex, dead crewman's a liar, that guy sets lots on fire, you should really run a background check before you hire.
It's the I've Been Framed episode.
Welcome to X-Trex, a podcast where we introduce each other to our fandoms one episode at a time. I'm your host, Erin Cline, and X-Files spooky bitch.
And I'm your other host, Stella Cheeks, a slut for Star Trek the original series. Each podcast, we pick 2 episodes that fit a cinematic theme, watch them together, and then record our feelings.
Our theme this week is I've Been Framed. Sort of.
Well, I'm going to blow Erin's spot up a little bit. Season 2 so far has been us squinting and making our episodes fit the theme, but not today, at least for me. It doesn't get more I've Been Framed than the Season 1 episode, Court Martial. That's the title. Court Martial. Not only is Kirk framed for the murder of one of his crew members, but we do get to see Kirk fight a computer, sort of, and win. Never tries a machine. Plus some side spoons action and some primo 60s fashion. It's not my favorite episode, but it does fit the theme.
Yeah, and this one's a bit more of a shoehorn.
An incredible shoehorn. I still don't think it works, but we already watched the episode, so we have to record this episode shoehorn.
And I'm pretty sure this was another theme, and then we switched it, and I was like, it's fine, I think it fits just fine. It doesn't. There are probably episodes that do fit a little better, like there's one where Mulder wakes up covered in blood and has no idea if he murdered somebody.
Yeah, that sounds like it fits the theme a lot better.
Well, that one's about how he's on ketamine. It's like a whole other thing. There's a reason I didn't pick it for this one.
Is that for a spoiler alert for a future theme? Did you pick that for I've Been Drugged?
No, I did not.
That's very funny that you didn't pick it for the drug episode.
I picked one where they were both drugged, but I'm pretty sure
fair.
that is going to be in there later because I watched it alone and I was like, oh, I have to find a way to fit this episode in. This is fucking batshit. Mostly, I just wanted to find a way to fit in one of my favorite episodes. So we're watching season 1's Fire. Yeah, I get it. It's not about being framed. It's where the murderer can't possibly be the driver. He's a longtime employee and has a spotless record. LOL, JK, it's actually Mark Shepard, and he's a serial killer, paranormal arsonist who murders a family's gardener and driver eventually, and then uses his identity to cause general chaos and death. Also, we find out that Mulder and his college girlfriend fucked on Arthur Conan Doyle's grave, unrelated to the theme, but definitely worth pointing out.
Well, I'm glad one of us is doing our job.
Listen, he does briefly get framed. It's just that he's already dead.
30 seconds.
It's not totally out of the theme. It's just mostly out of the theme.
Almost entirely out of the theme.
At the point that you ask, who's being framed? It's unclear because it hasn't happened yet. Anyway, are you ready for to get in there, Mr. Spock?
Sure.
Okay.
All of my old friends look like doctors. All of his look like you. Well, you might as well join me for a drink. With this inquiry coming up, he's going to need all the friends he can get.
Before we begin, a quick-ish episode summary. The Enterprise and her crew are docked at Starbase 11 for repairs after a brutal ion storm that resulted in the loss of crewman Lieutenant Commander Benjamin Finney. Kirk was forced to jettison a research pod containing Finney during a red alert to prevent the destruction of the ship. Although Kirk insists that he ejected the pod after the red alert, the computer record says it was only set at yellow and thus against regulations. Commodore Stone accuses Kirk of perjury and threatens court-martial. Stone conducts an interview with Kirk where he discovers that while once Finney and Kirk were best friends, his daughter is even named after him, Finney blamed Kirk for hindering his advancement in his career due to a past incident where Kirk reported a fatal mistake Finney made. Stone accuses Kirk of being negligent due to overwork and asks him to step down voluntarily, but Kirk, with the confidence of an innocent man, disputes the allegations and demands a trial. Before his trial, Kirk meets with his past girlfriend, Ariel, a lawyer on the Starbase, and despite his best efforts at reminiscing, he is shut down because she is worried about him. She urges him to get a good lawyer because, dun dun dun, she's the prosecutor, and she must do her very best to discredit him. At the trial, both Spock and Bones defend Kirk's character, but ultimately confirm that, yeah, it's possible, I guess, maybe, for him to resent Finney, and it is unlikely that the computer was wrong, but also, like, Captain Kirk definitely didn't do it. Just listen to us, please. Stanley T. Kugley, Kirk's offbeat attorney, puts the captain on the stand where he delivers a classic Kirk monologue. But unfortunately, the visual logs contradict his statement. During a recess, Spock discovers that he can beat the Enterprise computer at chess, a statistical impossibility since he programmed the computer himself. Using that evidence, the duo of Bones and Spock conclude that the computer has been tampered with, and in a big twist of fate, Kugley gives the men are greater than computer speech instead of Kirk in defense of Kirk. See, he still kind of defeats the computer. Kugley convinces the court to head to the Enterprise, where McCoy uses a nifty heart sound eliminating device, and they discover one lone heartbeat on board, that of Lieutenant Commander Finney. Finney reveals that he has sabotaged the ship and that it will soon drop out of orbit and kill them all. Except Kirk tells Finney that Jamie, his daughter, is on board, confuses Finney, punches him in the face, and fixes the ship. The charges are dropped, Kirk is restored as the captain of the Enterprise, and in the final scene, Kirk kisses a reel on the bridge. Literally, no one reacts to it as if it's a casual occurrence. And Bones and Spock quietly give him shit for it. What did you think of this episode?
I liked it. It was fine. It wasn't like super exciting, I wouldn't say, but it was interesting. I thought we got to see good stuff from Spock and Bones and from Kirk. Like, I also really liked seeing the prosecutor dressed up in her like fancy half caftan. It was really cute.
Yeah.
Her earrings were very nice.
She had a very like Erin aesthetic.
Yes, very much so. I commented later, I liked your hair, and you were like, yeah, I figured you probably would. Like, I liked her a lot. I thought that she was very good. I liked her like fancy dress uniform with like the pleating and the brooch. I thought that was really nice. I was very confused by the daughter of inexplicable age.
Yeah, Jamie, the daughter who is named after Kirk, but then Finney and Kirk aren't friends anymore, but they were friends long enough for like Jamie to know Kirk and be able to call him like Jim. But she's also wearing like a child's space outfit that is like a true nightmare.
It's
but
like
she's
an
also
Alice
like
in Wonderland in space outfit.
Yeah.
It's super bizarre.
And then she has this like change of heart, but it's unclear. It feels like there's a missing scene there.
Yes, very
completely.
much so.
Like, because I feel like when I watch this, I'm like, does she know that her dad's alive? Is she like in on it? I honestly
agree.
Can't tell.
Yeah, and they like bring her back, but then we don't see her again, which is like, okay.
She's just like, hey, she's on the ship, so you probably shouldn't kill everybody on the ship because you're going to kill your daughter.
Why did you do that? Like, oh, Jesus Christ. Okay. Like, there were parts of it I like, and like, I like dry legal dramas, so that part didn't really bother me that it was dry and a legal drama, basically. I don't understand the rules of space law. I don't understand why.
This is a court of space law.
I don't understand why sometimes speculation is okay, like why the prosecutor is allowed to like badger Bones into speculation.
Well, Kirk's lawyer doesn't object to it. So if nobody's if nobody's saying like, hey, objection, like nobody's stopping her. So
I guess that's true. That's a good point.
Because he's just sitting there being like, this is boring.
Yeah, his lawyer's like,
I love my books.
Yeah, I like that his lawyer's like obsessed with books and moves into Kirk's room very presumptuously.
I guess you could transport them. Maybe we used a transporter and beamed them all in.
Yeah. He just contacted engineering and was like, beep, boop, boop. I just need you to move this big chunk of books in, and then just spent time like spreading them out throughout the room. I also thought it was weird that in that scene, he's like, computers, don't trust them. And then later he's like, well, computers, they're right. You can't. What are we going to do?
Yeah, he's like, well, maybe you are at fault. I don't know. It's hard to argue with this computer, except for I'm going to give this impassioned speech about we shouldn't listen to computers or whatever.
Man is better than computer. Like, it was fine. There were things about it that I liked. I thought it was an interesting concept. It's not something that I would like show to other people as like, here's a shining example of what Star Trek is like. But it was good. It wasn't like poorly written or anything. Kirk is good in it.
It's a very like, I don't want to use this word slow or subtle, but it's just like a low key episode.
Yeah.
Right? Like there's not like a lot of action. Like there's a little at the end, but it's more like there's a lot of subtle acting. Like thinking about the scene with Kirk at the bar where he's like being like confronted by old classmates that are like, you killed our friend. And Kirk's like, he has very subtle like mess around and find out energy.
Yes, very
to the
much
point where
so.
like he's like, oh no, I think you can speak plainer. Why don't you tell me exactly what you think? They're like, well, you know what I think. He's like, no, but I want you to fucking say it to my face. And Bones is behind him being like, we should go.
Jim, I think it's
babe,
time to
can
go.
we leave?
Yeah. Bones has hard, babe, can we leave energy? Like, please, can we go? This is so awkward.
Babe, it's not worth it.
Yeah. And Kirk's like, it's always worth it. They fucked around. They're going to find out. I thought that also you said this while we were watching it, both Kirk and Bones particularly handsome in this episode.
They both look very handsome.
Spock looked particularly green for some reason.
They really did his makeup up in this episode. But he does look like he got a fresh haircut in
Yeah,
this
he
episode.
looks very well put together. Everyone looks very much like they're going to be wearing their dress uniforms, which is
Totally.
nice. Well, I think that works very well. It's just like, we've said this before, HD is not kind in some ways to things from the 60s, and Spock's very green makeup was one of those things in this episode.
One of my favorite things about like fan lore stuff is that like, you know, it's very clear that all of them are like wearing eye makeup, right? And so lots of people in like fandom have like really run with it. It's literally been written into like, it was like snuck into an actual published book that they like took it out, and now you have to search for the like first edition book. I have it. But one of my favorite things is like, if Vulcans actually have green blood, they wouldn't have pink lips. So Spock definitely just puts on fucking lipstick, which like fandom was like, yeah, he fucking wears lipstick every day. And it's great.
I mean, Kirk likes being covered in lipstick. It makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, everybody is, you know, they're in space and they have a lot to do, but it's
Presentation's important.
It's important to take care of yourself.
Yeah, when you look good, you feel good. Like,
when you look good, you can fight anyone.
Spock is like, it's only logical that I would present my best possible face every single day. Duh, obviously.
Absolutely.
He's got his nice little cat eye eyeliner on every day. He looks fantastic. It's great. I will say my biggest complaint about this episode, in the courtroom when they're like on the stand, basically, they have that light that they put their hand on, which is clearly supposed to be like
a lie detector or something.
But it never goes off. What's the point of the light if you never demonstrate that it actually goes off? Like,
nobody lies on the stand.
I know, but that's my biggest complaint. I thought at some point someone was gonna lie, and so that it would go off, and it's just like, no, it's just this lie detector hand thing. We're all telling the truth, but like, it feels like such a missed opportunity to not put someone on the stand who lies. Like, do we ever see that again?
Who would you have had lie?
I thought they were going to put Jamie on the stand and that she was going to...
Well, she does feel menacing, even though she didn't do anything.
I know, I agree. That's why I was like, oh, they'll put her on the stand and then the hand thing will go off, and then it just never played out.
Yeah.
And I was like, this seems like a waste of a prop, to be honest.
That's fair, but it did feel very spacey.
It was very spacey. It was just like, this is so strange.
This is again, I don't love this episode. I feel like it is kind of like boring. But a thing I love about this episode is when Kirk sees a reel, and it's like classic Kirk, like, I just left my old girlfriend, so I'm really happy that she's doing really well. And like, oh, you could be my lawyer. You're very talented. La la la.
Yeah.
Like, I love like Kirk like liking to see all of his friends and past lovers succeed.
Yes, I agree. I really liked that. And I like too that she was like trying to be very like, no, I'm not gonna. I have another case, and he's like, "You're talented. You could do 2 cases at once." She's like, "No, you don't understand.
I'm gonna fucking bring you down." I love when she's
bury
like,
you under this ship.
They're gonna present this as Kirk versus the computer, and you were like, "Big mistake." And I was like, "Yeah,
that's not gonna work out well for this computer. It never does."
Mistake number 1. You won't have a chance. Watch me. I don't even have to do the work here.
Kirk like, listen, if there's one thing I know, it's that computer's not going to take me down. I don't really have a lot of thoughts about this. My only other like real thought about this is that Ben, the crewman who like lies,
Benjamin Finney,
who we finally see at the end, looks startlingly like if Kirk and Willem Dafoe had a baby. I like could not get over it. It was so fucking weird.
Yeah, he's like
a very distinct face.
I think the casting director or whoever casts a lot of stuff in the original series does an excellent job when casting madness. There are a couple episodes that we haven't seen where we've seen some. When we watched The Naked Time, the guy that goes like crazy and tries to kill somebody with a butter knife, he does a good job.
Yes.
In an upcoming episode when we do like horrible bosses, there's a captain who goes like bananas and he does a really good job. This guy, like, he looks and feels like the madness has overtaken them. Mm-hmm. I think that they do a really good job of presenting like space madness.
Yes. Yeah, I would definitely agree with that.
There was a thing that I noticed this time. It's funny because I've seen this episode a bunch, obviously, because I've seen Star Trek a billion times. And I even watched this episode earlier this week to prep. And the personnel officer who is on the stand, the one with like the banging eyeliner, so good because she's got the black and then the blue. It's very 60s and very good. She is basically forced to be like, this is the incident that happened. Yes, Kirk did that. The whole incident is that when they were younger shipmen, Finney was supposed to be in charge of something and he let like a conduit or something lapsed, like he didn't attach it correctly. Kirk saw it, was like, this could have caused the whole ship to blow up, and he reported him because Kirk is very good at his job. And he was like, this could have killed everybody. We're friends, but like my
loyalties are to the ship.
My loyalties are to the ship and to my other crewmen, not just one person, until I meet Spock. And so Finney blames Kirk for like ruining his career, or like, you know, he hasn't had a lot of advancement because of this like big, you know, moment, even though previously he was like not very good at Starfleet and
right.
Like, but it's easier to scapegoat Kirk, right? To be like, it's this one moment, you did this to me, instead of like, maybe I'm not a very good officer. And so they bring this woman who is an unnamed character, unfortunately, to the stand to be like, to go over that incident so that the prosecutor, Ariel, can be like, well, this man hated Kirk so much because of this incident. Isn't it possible that maybe Kirk hated him too? Whatever. But you can tell that she really doesn't want to be there. She doesn't want to speak ill of her captain. We've never seen this character before, to my knowledge. I don't think we ever see her again, but it's one of those instances of Kirk's crew are very, very loyal to him and they care about him. And even when they're like, because you see it from Spock and Bones being like, I mean, I get what you're saying, but Kirk would never do that. So I don't know what the fuck you're trying to do here. But that makes sense because it's Spock and Bones. But to see like this low level like ensign or whatever do it. And then when she gets up to leave, she like makes eye contact with Kirk, which I never saw or noticed up until today when we watched it together. And she like apologizes to him. Like, I'm sorry. Like, I didn't want to do that. You're my captain. I care about you. Like, I'm really sorry I had to do that. And I thought that was such like a low-key subtle moment that was so great. And I don't know if it was in the script or if that actress like chose to do it, but like that was a great moment. That's a fun thing about this podcast. Like, I watch these episodes that I've seen a million times in the show I care about a lot, but I see new things each time, or from like your perspective. And I just thought that moment was really neat.
Yeah, I agree. I liked that a lot. Yeah, this like, I wouldn't say that this was a bad episode at all. It was just really dry. And that, like, there's not a whole lot to say about it, except that, like, it was good. I thought everyone in it did a good job. Even the inexplicably aged daughter. Like, there were things about it that I was like, I don't really understand what's happening here. Space law is confusing. But, like, other than that, like, I really enjoyed it for the most part. Again, I wouldn't, like, point at it as, like, best episode of Star Trek ever, bruh. But like, I liked it.
What did you think of the final scene where Ariel and Kirk kiss on the bridge?
Oh my God, eye roll. I thought it was so ridiculous. They were like, we're in this soft lighting. Do you think it would be unprofessional if I kissed the captain on the bridge? And he's like, well, we could try it and find out. And then they kissed. They're like, well, goodbye then, I guess.
Goodbye forever.
Yeah. She's like, do you know when I'll see you? And he's like, well, it's up to the stars. And then he just goes sit down, and Bones and Spock are like, we're just going to pretend that never fucking happened.
Very awkward silence. She's a good lawyer. Obviously. Indeed she is.
And that's it.
The end of the episode. I thought the ending is so funny. Like, it is not a funny episode, but the ending is so funny.
Yeah, it's like uncharacteristically funny for the episode.
Yeah.
Not for the series, but for this episode, it was like, what the fuck was that?
I also love this like running theme with Kirk and his past relationships, because like a problem, quote unquote, of Kirk is that like he could never be in a relationship because he's married to his career, he's married to his ship. But a lot of his like past relationships, they're really married to their careers and stuff too.
Yeah, totally.
Which I really like. Like, we see it
That's why they're good matches.
Right. We see it in Janice Lester, who obviously goes bananas. But we see it in Ariel, who's like, I'm a really fucking good lawyer. I'm the head lawyer at Starbase 11. Like, that's a baller-ass position. You haven't met her yet, but in like Wrath of Khan, you'll meet Dr. Carol Marcus, who is like literally the lead scientist in this like giant like Genesis program. Like, that's his ex. Like, he has these like very impressive ex like girlfriends. And I think that's neat.
Yeah, I think that's neat too. Oh, also, I made another note. One of the things I really liked about this, I doubt they're the originals, but I really like the exterior shots in this.
Oh, yeah, the remastered ones with the like purple Saturn.
Yeah, and like there was the one of the Saturn and like the skyscraper outside. It was just very visually striking, and I really appreciate. We don't get to see a lot of that, and it was nice to get to see like, oh yeah, we're in space, like for real space. So I really appreciated that. I thought that was really cool.
As like a transition into like Apocrypha and like mythology and stuff. So this episode was originally commissioned to be a cheap single set episode, kind of like when we did our pilot episode, which was like the pilot inside the pilot, because it was supposed to be just a courtroom drama, right? But they actually ended up building 4 new sets because they built the Kirk's quarters on the Starbase, Commodore Stern's office, the Starbase bar, and the courtroom itself. So they were like, we're totally going to save money. LOL, we built a lot of sets. Which I think is very funny.
They're pretty simple sets, though, in general. Like, there's a lot of prop work that was done inside of these, but not like a lot of like really intense like structural design, which I feel like they utilized the exterior shots for that, which, again, I have no idea what those looked like in the originals, but in this one, it felt like that balanced that as well.
Yeah, it's just a funny, like, I feel like anytime somebody's like, this will be really simple, it's like, it's never simple.
Oh, that's the classic X-Files.
Yeah.
This will be a cheap episode. Just kidding. It was the most expensive of the season.
So this is season 1, episode 20. This is the episode where the Starfleet dress uniforms debut.
Oh, really? Mm-hmm. I've seen them a bunch by now, but
right.
like, that's cool. I like that.
But this is the debut. And then this is also the first episode to refer to the main organization as Starfleet and Starfleet Command. Yeah.
It's so weird watching these out of order because I'm like, oh, yeah, I know all that already.
Well, and also, like, everyone knows Starfleet even if you don't watch Star Trek because it's like one of those in the lexicon.
Mm-hmm.
So shout out to one of our favorites, James Blish, who wrote a lot of the Star Trek books, specifically the ones where they took the episodes and made them clearer. In his book, they deal with the Jamie Finney stuff a lot more.
Oh,
like
good.
They make it like in the script there was supposed to be like we said, it felt like there was a missing scene. Like there was more to that character and more to like why the attitude changed between her screaming at Kirk and like beating him and having to be like removed from the room and then like, it's fine, maybe you should just take a ground position, I forgive you. Like,
yeah,
that feels really wild. And they had a scene where she was reading his letters and his attitude in them makes her believe that he might have pulled a stunt like this to get back at Kirk. So like in that moment, she is supposed to be like, well, maybe he's still alive, so I'll forgive Kirk or whatever. And like, but none of that really comes across. Like you can kind of feel it in the way that the choices that the actress is making, but also like we're missing that scene. And so James Bliss, like in the novel, like fixes it a bunch. Like, that doesn't make any sense. I'll just fix this.
Does James Bliss ever address how Finney thought he was going to get off of the ship?
Well, to be honest, I've never read that one, so I have no idea.
Because that was the other thing where it was like...
No, Finney was going to ruin the ship.
Oh, that's right. He was going to go down with the ship. That's right.
Yeah,
okay.
So he was like, he had gone mad at that point. He was like, I'm going to ruin Kirk's career, and then I'm going to destroy the Enterprise. I'm going to take everything away from this motherfucker.
Got it, okay.
At least that's how I've always read it.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
So then he's like, no, my daughter's on here. Oh.
Whatever. Attack of conscience.
And Commodore Stone is the highest ranking officer portrayed by an black actor to appear in the original series. He also commanded a starship. So, like, it's cool to have that, like...
Yeah, he, like, refers to Kirk. He's like, you and I are, like, 1 in a million. Like, people cannot do what we do. We commanded starships. So
yeah.
I think
the actor is really good. Mm-hmm. And it's also kind of begins, at least for me, the, like, tradition of, like, once somebody steps away from being a captain and away from being on the ship and they go to, like, Starfleet headquarters and kind of command, they have this, like, weird transition of, like, kind of accidentally turning to shitbags where they're like... Yeah, but like you could have been tired, so why don't you just like, because they play politics a lot more, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think him having that scene is kind of important in the like breadth of Star Trek and Star Trek writing because, you know, once you leave the ship and you have to play a lot more politics on the ground and you have so many pieces to move and stuff, it makes sense. And so I think that scene of him being like, I will write a report that will be as favorable as possible, but you need to like step down voluntarily. And Kirk's like, I didn't do fucking anything wrong. I'm not just going to play this game with you, which is always part of Kirk's personality, especially when we get to like Undiscovered Country and stuff, like when they're a lot older. But also I think sets the stage for a lot of like Starfleet nonsense that comes later.
I also appreciated too, like some of the higher ranking black officers that we see have turned out to be villains, like the one who programmed the computer who was like, oh, he's a huge fucking deal, and then like wound
unintentional villain.
Well, yeah, but is still like written in a way where it's like, oh, well, you're also like responsible for this. I thought at first Stone was going to turn into that either he was possibly because I knew what the theme was, like that he was the one framing him, or that he would like facilitate it in some way. So I like that by the end he's not. He's just a high-ranking black officer who is fine. Right. Like I liked that a lot.
As soon as he was presented with like the evidence, he was like, okay, I believe it. Let's go.
Yeah, exactly.
And Kirk's like, no, I'm going to go fight this man with my fists. You stay here. As with anything, I'm sure it exists, but I've never read any fic based on this episode. So I don't have any fandom lore to bring to it, personal fandom lore to it. But I do think, even though this episode's kind of slow, I think it is good character stuff. And I think even on like one of the like lists on some big nerd website, this has been included in some of like, this is a good Kirk episode because it is a good, like, if you wanted to show somebody like, oh no, Kirk is not just like this awful person. Like he actually cares about his ship and his crew. Like this is a good episode to show, like how he goes over the paperwork meticulously. He's like, he in court says, I would do it again because it was the right thing to do. In court, you hear his like list of accommodations. You see his crew, both his first officer and his medical officer and like a ensign or something, like go to bat for him. It is a good like, no, he's very good at his job episode.
And you get to see him menace some men in a bar, which I'm always here for.
Always here for Kirk, fuck around and find out energy.
Absolutely, 100%.
Any other thoughts about this episode?
No, that's it.
Ready for a synopsis showdown?
I am.
Captain Kirk is framed for the murder of a jealous crewman, but is saved by the tenacity of Spock, Bones, and a weird old space lawyer.
Kirk is framed for murdering a crew member who views him as responsible for his career failings. Thanks to a very quirky lawyer and Spock's deep love of chess, Kirk defeats another computer and saves the crew from death. No space laughter.
Just space like, at the end.
Space awkward.
Space
awkward.
Are you ready for Scully? It's me.
I am.
I was merely extending her a professional courtesy.
Oh, is that what you were extending?
All right, here's a episode summary, for the theme that I definitely fit. A man in England suddenly human combusts in his front yard while his family and a suspiciously recognizable gardener watch. Back in the States, Mulder and Scully are pranked into thinking their car is about to explode by Mulder's very English ex-lover from his Oxford days. Scully naturally hates her, though to be fair, if I was introduced to someone in that way, I would probably fucking hate them too. Phoebe, the ex, brings the team in to help her with a series of serial killings of diplomats where they've been mysteriously burned to death with no evidence. The only thing linking the crimes being the love letters sent to the wives by the perpetrator. The latest potential victim has come to the States in hopes of safely avoiding bursting into flames on his front lawn. Oh, also, Phoebe knows that Mulder is pathologically scared of fire and is using this case as a mind game against them because she's an incredibly pleasant person. While Mulder and Scully are learning from their pyrotechnic expert, which apparently Scotland Yard has none of, that the only thing that could make fire burn at the temperature recorded is rocket fuel. We see the suspiciously recognizable gardener has moved to the United States with his latest targets and has killed and assumed the identity of the caretaker, Bob. Bob pretends to befriend the family's driver by offering to go into town and get him some cough syrup for his cold, and on the way home does some light, inexplicable magic arson in a bar. Just kidding though, Bob definitely poisoned the shit out of the driver by adding rocket fuel to his cough syrup, and on the night of an important function, offers to drive his victim to be, as the driver is nowhere to be found, aka is dead from being arsoned from the inside. Bob naturally tries to arson the children at the function after being spotted by Scully, apparently the only person interested in doing her job and not just doing a bunch of vindictive flirting. Mulder tries to rescue the children, but fails miserably because of the aforementioned pathological fear of fire. And hey, look at that! Bob is there to save the children! Scully tries to question him, sensing that he is deeply suspicious, but is told off by Phoebe, thinking that he's the regular driver, that he's a longtime employee of the family, and his records check out, so buzz off, bitch! Mulder and Scully confirm from the bar's witness description that Bob is the magical arsonist, and back at the house discover the arsoned to death employees. He sets the house ablaze, letting Mulder get over his fear and finally rescue the children, and tells Scully she can't fire her gun at him as he's painted the entire house in a coat of rocket fuel. Phoebe, thinking quickly, throws fuel in his face, causing him to lose control and human torch himself in the front yard, where he's arrested. Phoebe returns to England with the family, and the father she's definitely having an affair with, again, she fucking sucks, and we see Bob in the emergency room being treated for burns that are healing miraculously fast and asking for a cigarette. What was the theme of this episode again? Ah, well, nevertheless.
You're so good at summaries. I'm like very jealous of that skill. My first note is, wow, Cecil has big Crowley vibes. LOL, it is Mark Shepard, because I immediately looked it up. I was like, nobody looks that much like Mark Shepard without being Mark Shepard.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely not. It's fucking impossible.
But he's a wee little baby. He's only like this is from like 1993, right? And so he's very young. This is only his like third credit, according to Internet Movie Database. Sorry for blowing up your spot, Bobby. Although he's like a horrible murderer in this, he is a cutie in this episode.
He is very cute. And also, it's funny that you say that about, like, oh, he must be Crowley. Crowley's character is based on this character.
Really?
From Fire. Yeah, because the
Amazing.
whole fucking crew from X-Files goes
That's
over
true.
to Supernatural, and they took this idea of this character and, like, fleshed him out as Crowley and made him this, like, I don't know, I've never seen the show, but like demon, angel.
He's a demon.
Yeah, they like took these powers and like fleshed, because the idea was that this character would come back. Like, he's alive at the end. That's something that you would think would happen.
I love the shot of him at the end where like half of his lip is like burnt up, but then he's still like menacing with his tongue and the other half. Great.
Well, they like, because he's alive, people really thought eventually, because there are a couple of people who come back, like
Dooms.
Yeah, like that's a thing that does happen a couple of times over the course of the show. Pusher is a really good example of that. But he just never does. And so it's like considered like an X-File of the X-Files. Like, why the fuck did this character never come back? Which is part of why when they all moved over to Supernatural, they were like, look, we're just going to take this character and we're going to bring Mark Shepard in. Mark Shepard was like, yes, you got it.
I mean, the characters aren't similar at all, other than Mark Shepard is smarmy and...
Can't Crowley also control fire?
I mean, he has a bunch of powers. He's the like head crossroads demon. He's got a lot of invisible hellhounds. He eventually becomes the king of hell. So he's like a lot of power, not just like firepower.
It was a foundation.
Okay. I'm not complaining. I'm just saying. It felt more like we just want to work with Mark Shepard.
Yeah.
Which, fair.
Yeah, totally.
Mark Shepard fucking rules.
So how did you feel about this episode?
I thought this episode was really fun. I liked it a lot. I liked a lot of things happening in this episode. I think I really liked Mark Shepard's performance. I really want to know why this dude was doing all this shit. Like, I feel it was very unclear. And then, like, they sort of explain his powers, but like, also doesn't make sense because he set his whole arm on fire in that bar scene, and it's showing that it takes time to heal.
At the end, he has 5th and 6th degree burns, and so I think the assumption is that
because of the rocket fuel.
Yeah, that in the bar he only has like 1st or 2nd degree burns that he could like theoretically cover up,
or in the heal faster because it wasn't like
right, exactly
rocket fuel burns.
Also, that's a real thing. 5th and 6th degree burns. It's just that they don't like teach them in schools and health class because people don't live through that kind of burn.
Yeah, unless you're magic.
Yeah, exactly. Ooh, magic arson.
Was it like supposed to be like inferred that he was part of that satanic ritual and he was sacrificed but lived and got like demon powers or something?
I guess.
Is that what the inference is supposed to be?
I think so, yeah. It is very fucking unclear, but I think so. Yes, okay. Sure.
The media really loves it to be like, satanic cults were very scary.
They were real.
And real. And it's like, no, they weren't, though.
Really weren't.
They really weren't, though.
If people were sacrificing babies, people wouldn't fucking know.
People would know.
That's not a thing you can just like do willy-nilly.
Yeah. Yeah, so I kind of like tried to piece it together a little bit, but I was like, he's just like crazy. There's no like real motivation. Like, I guess when we listen to like Scully's voiceover, she's trying to like he's like this and he would do it for this reason and
right.
Wibbly,
here's his pathology.
Yeah, I thought it would be some sort of more of like, because he's like targeting aristocracy. Like, I thought it would be more like
based on his like cultural class or
yeah,
whatever.
Something, instead of just like, I don't know, I think rich women are hot and I want to kill their husbands.
Yeah.
Because it also didn't imply that he like followed through on any like sexual assault or anything afterwards. He was just like, I killed your husband, I wrote you a love letter, and then I pieced.
Right. And it's like, okay, well, and with this one, you get the hint of he's cheating on his wife. And like, is that why he's doing it? Because these diplomats are fucking around with their wives, and that's why he's sending them these love letters.
Like they
don't
like, deserve these women or something.
Right. Yeah.
Also,
but like, absolutely unclear. Is not fucking explained whatsoever.
I think for not having any real motivation or whatever, Mark Shepard, and also being like having magic fire powers, Mark Shepard delivers a pretty like solid performance.
Yeah, definitely. I would totally agree with that. I feel like the most confusing thing about this episode, honestly, is why does he go to this bar and commit arson?
Yeah.
There's no fucking reason for it.
Like,
because
if he didn't do that, he would have gotten away with everything.
Yeah, absolutely. They just got really lucky that he wanted to commit some arson in the United States, I guess.
Yeah.
And like speaks in his accent and identifies himself. And
we're looking
that
for somebody
woman.
English. You can fake accents, lady.
Yeah. Yes. Listen, Phoebe's not very smart, okay?
You hate Phoebe.
I hate Phoebe.
I liked her tenacity and stuff at the beginning, but by the end I was like, oh, she sucks.
Yeah.
But she's presented in I'm kind of like fun and like unpredictable and, oh, I'm from his past, and she's like very pretty and like you know, so I thought at first she seemed very like fun and like a good antagonist to like Scully, like, oh, we're very different. But then like based on her choices, it's like, oh no, you're a monster.
Yeah, you're an absolute fucking monster. Phoebe was originally supposed to be a recurring role, and fans hated her so fucking much that they were like, don't you ever bring this bitch back. And she never comes back.
Well, she lives all the way in England.
Yeah,
I
good
do
stuff
appreciate that in the first episode we hear about like Mulder going to Oxford and stuff, and that in this episode that's followed up upon with like, oh, this is my ex from Oxford. Like,
Right.
I did spend a lot of time in England. Like, I do have these connections there.
Yeah. And also, like, she's kind of the basis for Diana Fowley later. Like,
Who I only know from like fandom reading and Apocrypha and like academia. And like, I have such a specific idea of who she is, and I cannot wait to meet her.
Which is so funny. Like, you have such a different basis for Diana that I feel like
Right.
you'll be one of the only people who likes her.
Well, because I read a bunch of articles and stuff about why the people who do like her. And so I think I have a very different basis about her.
Yeah, definitely.
Also, I don't want to fuck Mulder, so I'm like, meh.
Fair enough. This is also, with Phoebe being in this episode, this is Mulder's first on-screen kiss in the series. Not his last, but his first.
Not a great kiss.
Not a good kisser. Again, I don't think he has a lot of practice. They have a youthful indiscretion, but she definitely pegged him on that grave. There's no way he was the one doing penetration. Absolutely none.
There is a moment where, well, because he says,
I don't believe it.
he says like, oh, I have a photographic memory. And then she's the one that brings up, oh, do you remember when we had sex in Arthur Conan Doyle's grave at this cemetery or whatever? And you both say like, oh, but that's not even where he's really buried or whatever. And part of me, like, I want to write like a fucking 200-word fanfic where like that happens. And then Mulder goes, I just told you I have a photographic memory. It's this cemetery, not that one. I just want him to correct her in that moment and be like, yeah, no, I do remember it, but you got a lot of the facts wrong.
Right, exactly. I remember. You don't remember.
Nice try.
Nice try, Phoebe.
Can we talk about the scientist who's super horny for fire?
So horny for fire.
I loved that guy. He
was
did a good job
excellent.
because like that is something that could easily go into like creepy, but he was like, he walked that line of being like a pervert without being a creep so well.
Yes.
And I was like, these vibes I get.
I love, yeah, it's very up your alley. I love too that when he's introduced, he's just like caressing the projection
He's like,
screen.
oh, these are beautiful.
It's
This
beautiful.
salmon color.
Oh, this is 1600 degree flame. This is This is art. Like, he's so
Well, you
into
can also
it.
understand why he would have his job, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm fucking into fire.
And then when Scully comes back
demon
later,
poetry.
I've seen it bend corners. I've seen it bounce like a rubber ball. It's hot as hell. But I like when Scully comes back later, he's like, oh, so sorry. I was just really involved in this mob torch case. Like, so into
This
it.
man loves his job, and I'm happy for him.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, one of the few people who gets involved in Mulder and Scully's like work life who doesn't get murdered. So like we don't see him again, but he gets to live on being horny for fire for however long it
for
is
him.
he lives. Yeah. Yeah, I like him a lot.
One of my big complaints about the X-Files is that there's just truly not enough smell acting.
Yeah.
First of all, I feel like Rocket Fuel would smell. Second of all, there was a charred body in the house that had been there for a while, and nobody smelled that.
I mean, I guess it's a big house.
When they opened the door, like, I feel like there should have been a lot more smell acting.
I mean, even the sight of it, they're just like, oh, well, I guess we found the driver. Like, yeah, bitch, what the fuck?
More smell acting in the X-Files.
It does come, there is some later when Mulder reacts to autopsies. He's pretty good about smell acting. He's
Good.
like,
Good. I did like all of the sexual innuendo that Scully has in the beginning.
she goes hard.
Very good.
And there's this scene where Mulder is getting out of bed, basically naked. She's like, oh, I'm not.
Biting her lip and looking away.
Man, he's very good looking. And that's just like gratuitous foot shot. Very strange.
Very intense foot shot. She's like trying to go over the actual work she does, and his feet are just there unnecessarily.
Super unnecessary.
So if you have a foot fetish and you want to see David Duchovny's feet, this episode is for you.
Yes. Very prominent.
No judges. I mean, the final bit too, where he's in the office, and Scully comes in and uses an English accent and says, like, "Care to take me to lunch?" And he's like, "Oh shit." She's like, "Gotcha." Gotcha.
Yeah, and I like that too because you get to see the like playful nature of their relationship. This is very early.
You also see different types of playfulness. You get the malicious playfulness from Phoebe, and then you get to see the like harmless playfulness from Scully.
And I also like that too because one of the things about Gillian Anderson is that she was raised in London, and so like that is actually closer to her real accent. Like she had to use a vocal coach throughout the series of The X-Files, which is also part of when you get to 10 and 11, her voice sounds fucking weird. Like
she's just like, it's been a real roller coaster.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like, I'm older, but I also have this like really weird rasp because I'm using a different American accent for some reason.
If and when you get to Hannibal, her vocal choices in Hannibal are also quite strange. But Hannibal is a strange show, so it works. But it's also like, what is happening here?
Yeah, Gillian Anderson makes a lot of strange choices. She like code switches between accents depending on where she's giving interviews to, which is also like super fucking weird.
I bet you it's hard to not do that though. If you're like,
that's
you have
what she
so
says.
many accents in your head, you're like, I've lived so many places. However you talk is how I'm going to talk.
She gives a really great interview for NPR when she was first cast as Margaret Thatcher, where she's having an American interview, and that's exactly what she said. She's like, I find it really difficult not to take on the accent of whoever's interviewing me because I'm so used to having to switch back and forth.
Yeah.
And so I like that we get this like brief little glimpse of her with an English accent too. And it does sound really good. Like
yeah. I thought it was Phoebe. Like I got tricked like Mulder.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, this episode is very fun. I liked it a lot. It doesn't make a lot of sense, but it's very fun. The X-Files.
Yeah, exactly. 100%. I just have a couple of like apocrypha notes. Chris Carter said that Fire, he called it a very popular episode, but I'm just somewhat happy with the way that it turned out. Having written it and imagined it in a certain way, I think it could have been a lot better. Although I thought it was generally well directed, the show felt very wide for me, very loose and lacking in some things. So he
Agreed.
like recognized that like, this is weird. If this had been an hour and a half long show, we probably could have fit in a lot more about Cecil, but like, there's not really a lot in this episode you could take out and then replace with.
You take out that fucking bar scene.
I mean, you could take out that bar scene, but then how does Cecil get caught later? Like,
Yeah, I guess that's true.
It's like integral to him being caught, and so what you need is more information about why he would go do that. But like, we're never given any of that. So like, I agree, it is it's wide and open to interpretation, but like not in necessarily a great way, which is weird because for such a good episode, there's this very weird like crack in it of like, what the fuck is this? And then also, we pointed out while we were watching this, at one point you can see Mulder has a burn on his hand. That actually happened because David Duchovny is who he is and did his own stunts in this. And so he's in the fire several times. And at one point he touches the wall and burns himself. And he was the only person who was injured, even though there are a lot of really intense fire stunts in this. There are several people who are completely engulfed in flames. And like, that is done with real stunt work, and like that shit is dangerous as fuck. And the only person who got permanently injured was David Duchovny. And that burn is permanent. Like that's on his hand for the rest of his life. Like it's still there. They have to like cover it with makeup for the rest of the series.
I mean, he keeps acting though.
Yeah, he's like, fuck, and then just like goes and gets the kids. Like excellent work by Duchovny. That's it. That's all I have to say about this episode. I'm leaving a lot for Bobby in his section.
That's fair.
Ready for synopsis showdown?
Sure.
All right. A pyrotechnic serial killer comes to the States, and Mulder's shitty ex shows up to bully him into helping her with the case. Thankfully, Scully actually does her job, and everyone except the caretaker and the driver, who is briefly framed for arson and murders, makes it out alive.
A man with seemingly no motivation burns up the English aristocracy and pervs on their wives, while Mulder avoids flirting with his past, literally, and Scully does all of the work.
Classic X-Files.
It feels like a thing we put in a lot of synopses, but like that's what happened.
Also true, yeah.
You ready for Deep Throat's mission logs?
Spock, you're the most cold-blooded man I've ever known.
Why, thank you, Doctor.
Starting with the aptly named Court Martial, which was shortened from its original draft title, Court Martial on Star Base 11.
Sometimes the simple title is the effective title.
Sometimes we don't need something that is derived from a poem that should have 3 or more commas in it to be our episode title.
Is there in truth no beauty? Nailed it.
Nice. Wow.
Nice.
This original story is by Don M. Mankiewicz, and it was directed by Mark Daniels. These are both people we've talked about on this podcast before. The story appears to be based on, here's a connection, Arthur Conan Doyle's story, Sherlock Holmes, The Adventures of the Norwood Builder.
Hey, we did it!
Whodunnit podcasting, totally on accident.
No. We planned this.
That story is one in which an unscrupulous builder fakes his own death to frame a solicitor for murder on account of an old grudge that is finally discovered to be hiding within the house where he was presumed to have been murdered. So basically that,
Wow,
but
yeah.
in space.
But in space.
Yeah.
That's like a pretty faithful adaptation, actually.
Hey, I'd see more Star Trek episodes thinly veiled as Sherlock Holmes mysteries.
yeah.
And in fact, we get that a bunch in TNG. So
That makes sense.
Well, also there's that whole like line in there's a line in one episode where like Spock alludes to like being related to like Arthur Conan Doyle or Sherlock or whatever, and then there's this, I'll find it and I'll put it in our Discord, but there's like this whole like, based on this line, if you trace this lineage, like Spock's actually related. It's like their minds are very similar. Whatever.
expanding on that and on connections to TNG and things we kind of seen repeated, Ariel Shaw, who is Kirk's ex, does not let their past relationship get in the way of her being a good fucking lawyer, prosecuting him hard, doing her job to the letter of the law. While we were watching this, we all kind of commented about, you know,
It'd probably be recused.
maybe her recusing herself, maybe conflicts of interest, things like that. Apparently that just doesn't happen in space at all, because we see a similar scenario played out in the TNG episode, The Measure of a Man, when one of Picard's exes, Philippa Laveau, literally prosecutes him. So, you know, in
the
space.
future, we don't care about Stella. I wrote it down. Stella said at one point, in the future, we don't care about your sexual history.
Hey.
Or in the future, if you do something wrong, we'll get your ex to fucking prosecute you for it. Which, if you think about it, fucking brutal.
It's brutal.
So, on top of the daughter playing a larger role in the Blish novelizations, also in the shooting script for this, she is actually supposed to be there on the ship, and she's actually supposed to come in and talk to him after the Kirk fight. And so that, like, brief voiceover where Kirk says, you know, he begrudgingly
the awkward
told me,
like voiceover that's like feels very unnecessary and like out of place.
he begrudgingly told me where he sabotaged the ship. That's what that scene was supposed to be, and that voiceover was to fill for that because of time. Also, it is never clearly explained why Kirk is under pressure to jettison that pod, which is the whole beginning of this. In Blish's adaptation, he explains that the pod is directly exposed to the vacuum of space, allowing its instrumentation to take accurate readings. However, its plastic construction picks up radiation from dangerous ionization particularly quickly and must be jettisoned when its contamination begins to pose a threat to the rest of the ship. So there are scientific reasons why you need to be jettisoned, but nobody who watches this episode really cares about that or asks why. So it's, yeah. I'm glad Blish went into explaining that, but
we love James Blish in this podcast.
yes. The barkeeper wears the same costume later worn by the barkeeper on Deep Space Station K7 in The Trouble with Tribbles. So that's just the Starfleet bartender costume.
Yeah.
Also, very noted by Erin, Ariel sports the only female dress uniform ever shown in the whole series.
Oh, interesting.
That gold
It
braid,
fucks.
large collared thing. It fucks hard. I wish they used it more.
It's really cool.
Also, when we're talking about dress uniforms, notably missing from this episode are Scotty and Sulu, who we don't get to see in their cute dress uniforms, and that's sad.
They said.
Big deep dive Trek nerd stuff. We get a look for the first time at the series at a series of registration numbers on the chart in Stone's office. Those registration numbers are for other Constitution class starships that exist in this universe at the time. So it's a rare look at the other starships Starfleet has around there. One of them notably being the USS Intrepid, which is said to be being repaired at Starbase 11. The Intrepid, which we learn more about later, that's destroyed by the space amoeba and the immunity syndrome. That's the same ship. It's also noted to be piloted by a mostly / all Vulcan crew.
Mm-hmm. We haven't watched Immunity.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. One would then ask where all the Vulcans are on the starbase if their ship is being repaired there. However, we know from shore leave that Vulcans don't take shore leave. They just stay on the ship. So, you know, fandom kind of fixes that for themselves. Yeah. Getting into some casting notes for this, we see Reginald Lal Singh as a board officer. He's also known for The Naked Jungle and Storm over Tibet. Doesn't get lines in this, though. Another officer is William Meter. He's also known for the Skeleton Hour and Footlight Rhythm. Also a regular background work on Gunsmoke, Batman, and The Lucy Show. We get Bart Conrad as Krasnovsky. He gets a name, and also the one other board member that gets another line. Also known for Arrest and Trial and Sea Hunt, and a couple episodes of Perry Mason. That notable personnel officer that responds to Kirk in the courtroom.
That has that bomb-ass makeup.
Has the bomb-ass eye makeup, that is Nancy Wong. Her only other credits are The Bold Ones and I Spy. So she didn't act much after this, but she was really good in this role.
That feels like a character, like an actor choice, though. Like, I'm sorry.
I don't know. I think it might have started, the camera was behind Kirk so that we could see her walk out.
That's true.
And whether it was supposed to happen there or not, it seemed very authentic and very, very telling of how the crew feels to Kirk. Yeah. So I'm with you.
I'm glad I noticed it this time.
Oh yeah. It's very, very good. That is Win DeLugo as Timothy, who is an accomplished stage actor before this. After this, moves to the Virgin Islands to start a production company, and then there loses one home to a fire and 2 more to hurricanes.
Jesus. Life.
This is a little from his bio. Receiving a beautiful review in Variety for his stage work in Zoo Story while appearing on Star Trek.
Zoo Story.
We read that recently.
Oh, shit.
We read that as part of our book club.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. So that is like a fresh thing that we have recently read and talked about.
Also on Judd for the Defense, Custer, and Dragnet. He then decides the next logical step was to be start shooting his own independent movies in the Virgin Islands, and then loses 3 fucking homes. But while he's there, he creates the U.S. Virgin Islands Film Commission, bringing millions of dollars to the islands by luring hundreds of national commercials there, plus movies like The Island of Dr. Moreau, 4 Seasons, and Christopher Columbus.
Cool.
That's Alice Rawlings as the age-ambiguous James Finney. She was also Alice on the Patty Duke Show, also on The Virginian, and Bob Hope Presents the Chrysler Theater. Very, very serious face. I don't know how old she is, but she is a child here. Like, she did most of her work as a child.
Fucking adult.
Yeah,
it's
in
so
like a
weird
Space Alice in Wonderland costume.
That is Richard Webb as Finney. In 1952, Webb landed the role of Captain Midnight in the TV series of the same name based off of Captain Midnight, which was a long-running radio program. His young fans would join his secret squadron and receive recorder rings and other premiums for Ovaltine products and other show sponsors.
It's your pregnant ass yelling about Ovaltine.
It's a big part of A Christmas Story. Like, that's what happens. They get decoder rings. It's secretly sponsored by Ovaltine. Like, that's... I think that might be what that's based on, actually.
Yeah. Although he earned the displeasure of Captain Midnight producers when he refused to drink Ovaltine in public because he hated the shit.
Yeah, it's gross.
It's not actually good. But yeah, that is so accurate that I have no doubt that is what that's based on.
Yeah, it's gotta be.
Yeah. As Captain Midnight, he made personal appearances around Los Angeles area, and his credits start in the 40s and go all the way to 78. With most of his career playing hard-jawed detectives, criminals in crime dramas, best known for Border Patrol and Out of the Past. This is Joan Marshall as Ariel Shaw. I'm going to read some of, if not all, her IMDb bio because it's wild. And I couldn't rewrite this myself. I want to just get the facts out there. Trigger warning for child labor and maybe also like femme sexualization from a young age that's very of its time, but is fucking bonkers now.
Okay.
Well, here we go.
Joan Marshall, born June 6, 1931 in Chicago, Illinois.
Hey!
She attended St. Clement's. Looking far more mature than her age would indicate. When she was just 14 years old, she auditioned for and was hired as a showgirl at Chicago's Chez Paris, one of the country's foremost nightclubs in the 40s and 50s.
Yikes.
2 years later, she was appearing in Vegas shows.
At 16? Oh, no.
Vegas was where she met her first husband, and her son was born. Her daughter was born 3 years later, and then she moved to Beverly Hills, where she started acting on television. That was her life before television.
That's crazy.
That's wild.
She does a series called Bold Venture, makes about 10 films, also starred in Homicidal. She was signed by CBS and appeared often on such television shows as The Jack Benny Program, The Red Skeleton Hour. She loved doing comedy, even though she didn't get to do it very often. She also wrote a bunch of TV with Dirk Wayne Summers, a lot of sitcoms. She married director Hal Ashby, and he took a lot of her early life experience and turned it into a romantic comedy film, Shampoo, which she was actually really pissed he used a lot of her life for. But she was in it, so it's kind of a give and take. She also made guest appearances on Maverick, 77 Sunset Strip, I Spy, and her last credited role was that of Phoebe Munster in a pilot of a 2004 attempted Munsters reboot show.
She also was married 5 times.
Yeah. I mean, young Hollywood.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
You looked that up, huh?
Yeah, she's fascinating. I'm also looking her up while you're talking.
Absolutely fascinating. And like, I don't know, maybe check out Shampoo if you want to learn more about her life. Go ahead.
She got married to her last husband in 1990 and then died 2 years later. So she got married at 59. Like, good for her.
Damn, she died young.
Yeah, well, you know.
When you go through that
Yeah,
young.
true.
She also had polio.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Her life is insane. I like her a lot.
We're more about Joan Marshall. I say she's the hidden gem from the casting in this because she's great in this and a really
It's
interesting
a
fucking
bonkers
person.
ass life.
Yeah. That is Alicia Cook Jr. as Coogly. He had the nickname Hollywood's lightest heavy for being of small stature but playing intense villain roles and more psychotic, psychological-based characters.
Interesting.
He debuted on stage at 14 and worked in vaudeville, stock companies, and Broadway.
More child labor.
Yeah, but his earlier work was more generic teenage stuff, and he really only found fame after he took towards more disturbed, anxious, unhinged characters, and is most known for movie roles like Phantom Lady, The Maltese Falcon, Shane, House on Haunted Hill, and Rosemary's Baby. His last credited role was 13 episodes of Magnum P.I. as Ice Pick Hofstetter. That brings us to Percy Rodriguez as Portmaster Stone. He was a pro boxer in Canada in his late teens before transitioning to Broadway and then movies and film roles, like guest roles on Wild Wild West, The Man from U.N.C.L.E. right before this, and then after getting to play the role of black neurosurgeon Harry Miles on the final season of Peyton Place. His whole deal was going after high status roles, high status white collar roles as a black actor.
Awesome.
So his credits are filled with him playing doctors, judges, mayors, all with that impressive voice and demeanor. He really, really carries that gravitas.
Dope.
Also seen in The Heart is a Lonely Hunter, Sanford, TJ Hooker, Shat knows gold when he sees it, Benson, as well as doing voiceover work as the narrator in the original Jaws theatrical release trailers, and also as the narrator in that Disney exclusive Michael Jackson movie, Captain EO.
Don't remember that.
Moving on to Fire. I think, once again, just two of the most straightforward
For real.
episode titles that we've ever had on this show.
Yeah, they both are like, what is this episode about? Court martial.
What is this
Fire.
episode about? Fire. This was written by Chris Carter and directed by Larry Shaw. Larry Shaw's a guy who only directs 2 X-Files episodes, this and Fallen Angels. He also directs a TNG episode, Loud as a Whisper, Some Life Goes On, Castle, The Flash, Guilt, but is most known for directing 50 episodes and producing 156 episodes of Desperate Housewives. So, like, a wild genre swing.
Yeah, well, the man knows drama.
Since this is a Chris Carter episode, there's kind of a bunch of wild shit in the script that doesn't get translated to the actual show, because this is one of Carter's earlier scripts as well. So there are a few fire stunts that were written in and planned, but not in the final shooting, including setting a 1/4 mile of white picket fences on fire at the same time.
Dope.
And also more fire that was supposed to fill in the backstory of Lively. Specifically, something alluding to a wedding and a fire and a woman who looks like the woman in the painting and who looks like the wife in the couple. So
That would have made so much more sense.
Yeah.
apparently,
Also, the first wife in that we see, the guy who is Human Torched at the beginning, looks also like
Yeah.
that wife
yes.
too.
So
It's that very
his
like Princess
psychological
Dialog.
Yeah. Mhm.
his psychological backstory is to always be chasing these women and these relationships and ruining them with fire, or fire has to be involved. Apparently, Carter went deep into studying pyromaniacs and their psychology for this episode. So when Carter says, like, I liked this episode a lot, but I feel like it was missing something or it could be better, there was a lot more psychology and also a lot more relationship stuff with Mulder and Phoebe that was cut from this that kind of creates the holes in the logic here.
Which if they like brought that character back, they could have filled in a lot more.
Yeah, except fans fucking hated her.
Not Phoebe, I'm talking about Lively.
Yes, absolutely. It really does seem like they were setting that up and it just never happened. They kind of bet on a couple of other monsters over him and I don't necessarily understand why.
Yeah.
Also happening during Carter's writing for this and while they were shooting it were the famous 1993 Southern California wildfires. So Chris Carter is literally writing this while half the state is burning.
Yeah, well, that's what happens in California.
We briefly see Mulder get out of bed and Scully look away and bite her lip. Mulder is wearing some black silk boxer shorts. However, in the original spec strip, those are supposed to be jockey underwear.
That's like product placement?
Oh, yeah, that's just what they're listed as, like, to describe them.
Also, it seems more on brand with Mulder, to be honest.
I don't know. I can see this guy being like, sometimes I like to wear my silk boxers when I'm having a rough day and my ex-girlfriend is being really mean to me, so I'm going to put on my nice silk boxers.
That's true.
Sometimes you just do that just for you. Mm-hmm. David Gauthier, who we've discussed in previous episodes and also was the crew guy that played the director guy in Hollywood AD. He's one of their regular special effects guys. He also did all of the fire effects and safety on this. All of those looked brutal as fuck.
Yeah.
It's kind of amazing that David Duchovny was the only person harmed for this. A lot of the stuff that you see in the house towards the end, like all of the fire shooting out of those paintings and stuff, those are just big propane burners that they've built into the walls, pumped a bunch of propane through and lit a blaze. So that one scene where Mulder is like crawling through the hallway and he's ducking, the fear of the heat off of those was real. There's even one where Mark Shepard lights that whole hallway ablaze and you see Lively in the background kind of like sink down in the hallway. It's because the heat was so hot, he felt like his fucking scalp was burning. Fire is hot, y'all.
Yeah.
The original script of this episode includes a conversation near the end in which Scully comments, "Well, never let it be said that you wouldn't walk through fire for a woman, Mulder." And he answers, "And never let it be said I wouldn't do the same for you, Scully."
Oh,
why did they cut that out?
I think that's a lot of telling and not enough showing.
That's
and I think
fair.
there's a lot of really good showing in this episode.
That's fair. It's a good line.
So we talked a lot about that pub scene and why it exists and how it's unclear and like how he does what he does and sets the bar on fire. I'm not sure if this is another, missing beat from his psychological profile. Maybe the woman in the bar was supposed to look like the other woman or something like that.
She's
But
blonde.
Yeah.
also missing from that is how exactly he sets the bar on fire.
Yeah.
And that's because it was supposed to be part of a stunt that they were trying to shoot that didn't necessarily work out. He's supposed to light up his hand, and then he's supposed to, you briefly see he has like a bag or something by his other hand.
Right.
That bag's supposed to have the propellant in it. He's supposed to light up his hand, take the propellant out of the bag, dump it all over the bar, and light up the bar. They light up his hand to do the stunt, and Mark Shepard can't get this can open. Literally, like, screaming to try to get it open and smash it on the bar. So he finally does, and, like, they do the shot where it sets the bar on fire, but it just looked too muddled and ended up getting cut.
I mean, I guess I filled that hole in. I was like, I see the bag. I assume there's accelerant in the bag. He does a thing, and I just assume we just didn't see him pour it. Like, that part's still red to me completely.
Fantastic. I missed that several times. I always just thought, like, I don't know.
They just, like,
there was a
zoom
bunch
in
of
on the
whiskey or
bag
something.
so
I
much.
thought it
Yeah.
was the cough syrup because that's what he's doing.
I
Right.
definitely thought it was accelerant.
Speaking of Mark Shepard, who we'll talk about more in the casting stuff, but he has a bunch of fun quotes and stories about shooting this. So if you look up this episode on IMDb, there's a bunch of stuff I won't talk in here, but he had a great time even though this shoot was wild. He also quit smoking 6 years prior to making this, and so he had to smoke Honey Rose herbal cigarettes anytime he was smoking in the production. Also, concerning those self-lighting cigarettes that we see him use throughout this, they were only able to make 3 of those for this shoot, and he insisted very smartly on letting the crew have him test one. His quote is, The cigarette was the first stunt we did. I asked the special effects guy to show me how the cigarette worked. They said they only had 3, but I insisted, and they finally agreed. One of them put it in my mouth, lit it, and it blew up.
Oh my God.
They were very embarrassed, and then they fixed them all, taking the magnesium charge out to make it lighter. So all of that's done by like a copper wire that's ran down the side of his face that the crew can trigger to light.
Interesting. I can't believe they were like, yeah, we'll do it live. Don't worry about it.
Special effects in the fucking 1993.
Really?
And since it's X-Files and since it's a minute since we've talked about it, some crazy Chris Carter number stuff.
God damn it.
And X-Files referring to the events of this episode is numbered 11214893. 11/21/48 was the birth date of Dory Carter, née Pearson, Chris Carter's wife, and this episode was filmed in 1993. Now, to get into some broader fan lore stuff, Erin talked briefly about the huge blowback of the character Phoebe Green. This is into this season of The X-Files enough where the fan community is really, really getting invested in Mulder and Scully's relationship. Relationship, of course, now starting to be shortened to ship, and the people wanting Mulder and Scully to be in a relationship have started calling themselves shippers. That is where this comes from. However, we're not at the point where people are using cute ship names, amalgamations of someone's first name or whatever. So the official names for this relationship were MSR, Mulder-Scully relationship, or the mothership.
Ugh.
And there were 2 factions, much like in a lot of fandoms today, of people who supported this and people who are anti this relationship.
Ugh, antis have always existed.
Antis have always existed. I love the name for these antis, though, because in the fan community, there are people who are MSR shippers, and then there are people who are no Romos.
I'm a no Romo.
Sort of. You're sort of a no Romo.
No, I was just saying like I'm a no Romo, like I was one of those bros.
Oh, okay. I see. I'm a no Romo.
Okay. You're a no Romo.
Yeah.
So that change in how shipping nomenclature worked was a big sticking point for a lot of early fans on the boards for X-Files, because when people started coming in with names like Scolder and references like that, the older fan board people would be like, okay, so you're like third wave of this ship when we've been here the whole time.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
I love that both of our fandoms have these like the mothership or the premise. Like I like these like overarching, like these are our like the title of our ship, the premise, the mothership.
This is very serious.
It is serious.
We'll get into some casting on this. We see Alan Robertson as Charles. He is also in Teso dos Bichos as Carlos Roosevelt. Also in an episode of Millennium, Outer Limits, Poltergeist: The Legacy, and Ernest Rides Again. He was a World War II captain who had written books on his experience, as well as being Dean of Fine Arts at the University of Calgary, all before taking on some TV roles in retirement.
I love that. Oh, I was like a captain during World War II. I wrote a bunch of books. I was a professor. I'm going to be an actor now.
No, I'm on the X-Files. That's Christopher Gray as Jimmy, who also did a Millennium episode, and also, surprise, a voice actor. He was Enzo on Reboot and Avalanche on X-Men Evolution. So, like, a bunch of people listening to this podcast have heard that little kid's voice as other roles.
I love X-Men Evolution. Avalanche is a great character.
Yes. Opposite him, not opposite, but next to, is Keegan McIntosh as Michael.
Keegan McIntosh.
He was also
English-ass name.
Yeah. He was also in Legends of the Fall and the Goosebumps 2-parter Werewolf Skin.
No.
That woman in the bar who we briefly talked about, her name is Linda Boyd. She's also in F. Emasculata as Elizabeth, also on an episode of Millennium, also a huge Canadian TV actor. She's been on everything. She was Darla on Crow, Stairway to Heaven, Rachel Todd on You, Me, and the Kids, film roles in She's the Man, Tokyo Drift, was Dana Whitcomb on Sanctuary, and Phaedra Nixon on Arrow. She also did 2 episodes of Supernatural, Pac-Man Fever, which is 2013, and The Gamblers, which is 2020. So she was in one of the
I've seen one of them and not the other.
Yeah. She played Dr. Jennifer O'Brien in Pac-Man Fever. And also plays Eve Tessmacher's mom on Supergirl. there's
she
going to
did
be
a really good job, especially the stuff in the hospital. I thought they like actually gave her some depth to that character, which they like didn't have to.
it's not a small part. Like her information and help is what breaks the case. That's Phil Hayes as driver number 1. Oh, I lied about that kid. This is our voice actor. Notable on-screen roles as McGregor in Unforgiven and Greg Reed in Powder, but damn, this guy's voice actor career is huge. 39 episodes of the 90s G.I. Joe, 65 episodes of the Sonic the Hedgehog cartoon as Scratch and Sergeant Doberman, Conan on Conan and the Young Warriors, Hack on Reboot, voices in Batman Beyond, the Sabrina the Animated Series, Crypto the Superdog, a lot of things, and still working.
I just looked it up. Pac-Man Fever is a really good episode because it's a Felicia Day episode, and there's like a lot of like video game references because she's a good nerd and she has like to fight a video game in her brain, and it's awesome because Felicia Day rules.
Yes.
Yeah.
I just can't remember the titles of things, but then I look them up. I'm like, oh yeah, this one fucking rules.
That's Duncan Fraser as Melvin Beatty, who is horny for fire.
Yeah.
He's also in Time Cop and The Exorcism of Emily Rose, the Highlander TV series, Da Vinci's Inquest, which is that big Canadian show that keeps getting brought up, Outer Limits, and 2 other episodes of Supernatural.
Yeah.
2010's Hammer of the Gods as Odin.
Oh yeah.
That's him. And 2015's There's No Place Like Home as Clive Dillon / Michael Carter.
I'm pretty sure that one's a big bummer of an episode.
He was also recently seen in The Haunting of Bly Manor as Older Henry.
Oh, okay. I'm looking it up. He was really good.
If we're going to have to pause every single time. You know.
I just want to know. Oh, There's No Place Like Home is the terrible Wizard of Oz episode.
You
course
couldn't
it
tell
is.
that from the title?
I know,
course
but
it is.
I didn't even like think about it. But that episode is dumb.
That brings us to Laurie Patton as the Lady Marsden. She played Mary Jo Buttafuoco in the Amy Fisher Story TV movie starring Drew Barrymore this same year.
Incredible.
Also, an episode of Supernatural.
Oh my God.
2016.
They really were like, fire
yeah.
fucks. We're taking everybody.
We want the whole
This is the
cast of
4th
fire.
person from this episode.
Yes, and not going to be the last because you know there's more coming up.
Oh yeah. Well, I was including him as the 4th person because he's like a big part of Supernatural.
She plays Lorraine Fox in the 2016 episode celebrating the life of Asa Fox. I don't know if you know that one.
I'm sure I do. I don't
sure.
know. I can't remember the names of things.
That's Dan Lett as Sir Malcolm Marsden. He also played Philip Ramsey on Nikita, Defense Secretary Weisberg in X-Men Apocalypse, and recently played Paul Manafort on the Comey Rule TV miniseries. Congratulations, and also I'm sorry. Which brings us to Amanda Pays as Inspector Phoebe Green. She always had that throat-placed lower voice, and so a lot of her child acting in school and stuff was her playing male roles as a young little girl.
Very Shakespearean. Reverse Shakespeare.
She comes from an acting family with her mom and dad also being actors, and she had a aunt who was a famous child actor. So she took to all of this early and then became a very successful model in her early teens. Then at 22, she suddenly got tired of what she called clothes horsing and decided to act. I fucking love that term for a
Clothes
model.
horsing?
Clothes horsing. She studied intensely in London and made her professional debut opposite George Segal in The Cold Room on HBO in 1984. That was back when HBO was just making its own movies and showing movies. She was Theora Jones in Max Headroom, both the movie and the TV series, also in Oxford Blues, Off Limits, the music video for Sade's Smooth Operator she was in, Minder on the Orient Express. She played Dr. Tina McGee in both the 1990 Flash TV series and comes back to do it again in the 2014 Flash TV series.
Oh.
Also in Leviathan, Thief Takers, Martial Law, Nip Tuck, Psych. She also works as an interior designer and hosted the Fine Living Network's show Breathing Room. I wish we got more of her here as this character. Carter specifically sought her out for this character and kind of formed Phoebe around his thoughts of what he saw of her as a performer.
She's a great antagonist.
Yes.
Yeah, and very much the antagonist in a lot of this. And I would expect if we did see her again, she might be, I don't know, perhaps even further unhinged considering what we saw her do.
Yeah, it would have been cool to see her come back as like an actual villain. I mean, because she is a villain, but she's like a soft-coded villain.
Because she's still like law enforcement. They're still solving a crime together.
Right. She is very good at her job. She's just, having an active affair with the person she's supposed to be helping.
Which I think kind of negates you from being good at your job. I'm just going to float that in.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, a cab.
Even if it's Scotland Yard. Maybe especially if it's Scotland Yard.
Who apparently, again, doesn't have arson specialists. I don't understand that.
Listen, no one is as horny as fire as our boy. That brings us to, of course, Mark Shepard. If I say the name Mark Shepard out loud and you don't know who that is by name, okay, that's Romo Lapkin from Battlestar Galactica. That's Crowley from Supernatural. That's Kim Sterling in Leverage. That's Willoughby Kipling in Doom Patrol. Benedict Valda on Warehouse 13. Ivan Erwich on 24. Badger from Firefly. Guest roles on Voyager, SD1, and also has producer and director credits. Also, I didn't know about this till I looked him up. He's also an accomplished session musician playing as a drummer from an early age and has toured Britain with bands as well, on top of being one of the most recognizable sci-fi fantasy actors of our time.
Yeah.
Also, guest roles on Doctor Who, Chuck, Dollhouse, Medium. The story with him getting cast in this is 2 weeks before he received a call to audition for this episode, one of his friends introduces him to Gillian Anderson, just in passing. They just meet, kind of walking down the street.
Yeah, this is just my friend, cutie, Mark Shepard.
However, he doesn't really get to interact with either of them much in this episode. He's mostly just with the family and other places. He learned all of the sleight of hand magic specifically for this part, which is something every insane acting teacher will tell you to do. Like, the example is, if they want a juggler, you say yes, and then you go home and you learn how to juggle. But he was really excited to learn that magic trick, work on it. Even though it's cut during the episode, he actually physically does the magic trick in one take. So, he nails it.
Cool.
Nerds.
It's Mark Shepard. He's everywhere. He's cool.
The best.
He's still working.
Yeah, he's fantastic. He's that guy that every time he shows up, people are like, oh my God, it's that guy.
That's it. Thank you.
That's so cute.
Care for lights?
All right. So overall thoughts, restating how each episode tied to the theme. How did yours tie to the theme, Erin?
Well, for about 30 seconds, the driver is framed for murder.
Mine is very heavily tied to the theme.
It is the theme.
Also, weird Arthur Conan Doyle references that connect it. That's our sub theme.
Also, X is coming back into main characters'
That's true.
lives. That happens. That's really important for both of these episodes.
That is a really good point.
I think that may have been our original theme, was something about exes coming back.
Well, we have a different theme that's horrible exes.
Yeah. So, again, I have no idea how this wound up being. I've been framed.
Well, too late now.
Too late now. Whenever this episode rules, I'm glad you got to see it.
Casual fan questionnaire. As a casual fan, would you recommend this episode to a newbie?
Not to a newbie, I don't think. I think you kind of already have to have an affinity for the show in order to unless you really like dry legal dramas. If in that case, yeah, sure, absolutely. If you're looking for a dry legal drama, Star Trek's your man. No. I wouldn't dissuade them from watching it, but I would not, again, I wouldn't say this is a good beacon to point to of what Star Trek is about.
Yes.
Not particularly. Would you recommend this to a newbie?
Yeah, I think so. I think it still has season 1 vibes and they're still feeling everything out, but I think it's fun. It does have that in that X-Files classic of this is fun, nothing makes sense, but it doesn't matter. Mark Shepard is a really good villain. I do think even though she never comes back, Phoebe is a good antagonist for both Scully and Mulder, and so the choices they make around her are really, I think, important for their character development, and it's just fun. I would recommend this one.
Cool. What's a scene or moment from this episode that you won't forget?
I think the final scene. I think the scene where he's super burnt, but is still flirting with the nurse. Because again, the whole time I was like, what is his motivation? And then I was like, what? How is he dying? This doesn't make sense to me. I saw his hand on fire. He's fine. That's his superpower or whatever. And so to see him actively regenerating, and that is the flirting is part of his character or whatever, and it's also very Mark Shepard, but it's also a threat, right? I'm coming back. I'm alive. And he was supposed to come back, or they had planned on bringing him back. So I feel that was a good cliffhanger of oh, he's fucking coming back.
Totally. I think mine is the babe, it's not worth it energy in the bar at like the very beginning.
With
basically.
Bones?
Yeah. There's just something about Kirk leaning on the bar and the like, oh, you want to fuck around and find out? Why don't you say it to my motherfucking face? And Bones is like, please, I just wanted to have a drink. Please, babe. Come on, babe.
And then immediately followed by that, like, Bones flirting with a reel and then realizing it's one of Kirk's ex and being like, well, we can be friends.
Yeah,
The,
absolutely.
like, complete switch.
Yeah. I like that. I thought that was a good Bones scene.
Who are you shipping in this episode?
Not really anybody. There's not like, there's that babe, come on, it's not worth it energy. But even that doesn't feel like sexy. It's not like I want them to kiss. Like there's that triumvirate moment at the end where they're like, we're just going to ignore that this thing happened just now. Awkward. So there's like that. But this just isn't a very shippy episode.
No.
Do you feel like Kirk and Ariel conveyed their past romantic relationship in an effective way, at least?
I thought that they did a good job, like Stella says, about like, I really respect and care about and for my ex. I never felt like, ooh, I want them to kiss. Even when they did kiss, I was like,
It did feel
eye roll.
but it also felt like a goodbye kiss too.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
we had a relationship. It didn't work out because we both are married to our careers. We're happy to see each other. I'm glad you still have a career and I didn't ruin your career. Goodbye kiss. I'll see you never again.
Yeah, it didn't feel even particularly romantic. It was just like, oh, okay, goodbye. Like, it felt more like, oh, we're going to shoehorn in because he's definitely straight. Like, he's not. It's cool. But yeah, I wouldn't say this is a very shippy episode. Who are you shipping in this episode?
I mean, I guess I'm not like hardcore shipping Mulder and Scully, but like there are definitely like moments of like when Phoebe comes in and Scully is like, has that pushback, but then also Scully like ribbing him with all the sexual innuendo jokes, and like they're very funny, but also there is like a hint of like jealousy there. And you know, you could, if you are not an MSR shipper, you could easily be like, oh, but that's just like professional jealousy or whatever. But it does have that like kind of romantic undertone, and then the like bite of the lip and like look away or whatever. So I think I'm not like hardcore into it, but I see it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally.
You're shipping that dude in Fire.
I was just going to say the same
That
thing.
dude in Fire.
You want that dude to fuck some fire.
That dude wants to fuck fire. And I want him to. I want him to live
I
his
want
best
that for him.
Fuck the sand, fuck the fire. Let's go.
Is it a fuck, fight, or flop?
That's a fine plus. That's, like I said, I enjoyed this episode, but it is very dry. And it's not like, again, I wouldn't like pick it out as I'm definitely going to watch this episode again of my own free will. Like, if I was doing a full series rewatch, I wouldn't like skip it or anything. It's just not, it doesn't fuck. It knows about sex, but it doesn't fuck.
I would say this is a fuck minus. I think the performances are really good. I think it's very fun, but the like major plot holes are kind of annoying.
Yeah.
So like, fuck minus.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's totally appropriate. All right. You can find us on the internet. Follow us at NYD Productions on Twitter and interact with the show using the hashtag XTrexPod. You can find me at NYD Urgency on Instagram.
You can find me on Twitter at Stella_Cheeks.
And you can find me on Twitter at Haberdasher9K.
You can also email us at xtrexpod@gmail.com with questions or comments. And as always, if you want links to a lawyer AU, I got it.
And if you want special behind-the-scenes action, like our script notes, including reactions of us watching the episodes themselves, episode outtakes, extra podcasts like unofficial channels, and access to our Discord where we drop a crazy amount of links, extra information, and have extra discussions about these episodes, you can check out our Patreon at patreon.com/NYDProductions, where you can get access to all of that and more for only $1.
And don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and to tell your friends. We find this nerdy shit is better when it's shared.
We'll see you next time for the Fuck, It's Cold episode. In the meantime,
Believe boldly.
Seek truth.
ship proudly.
X-Trex is created and written by Stella Cheeks, Erin Cline, and Bobby Hoffman, and produced by Bobby Hoffman for NYD Productions. Our show theme is Alien Spy by Ionix, and our show art was made by Jonathan Curtis.